Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me in our very first episode of ABAccess Hub. I'm your host, Hades. And before we start, I wanted to say thank you in advance for taking the time from your busy schedule to tune in. I know it's been a very stressful time doing these changes. And I originally was going to make my first episode on business trends in ABA for 2025, but this topic is on the mind of many Florida based ABA providers and agencies. So I wanted to talk about these changes and how they are and will continue to affect your practice or your job as a therapist. Before we start, all I wanted to say is don't despair. I know it's been quite an adjustment, and everyone, whether you are in network or not with any of the managed care plans, we are all feeling overwhelmed with information overload. If we're not thinking about our multiple attempts to get a contract with a payer, we are thinking about keeping the practice operational during this transition. And that's for ABA practices. If you're an RBT or a BCBA, you're scrambling to understand what's going on and how it's going to affect your pay. But for my ABA practice owners out there, don't start having second thoughts about being an owner. It's time to learn your rights during this transition. ACA has provided information for providers in their SMMC page, and in that page, they don't only include information related to the ABA program, but also COC provisions. Now, what are the COC provisions? The COC period was designed to protect both providers and clients during this transition. During this time, the managed care plans like Sunshine, Molina, Community Care Plan, they must honor current authorizations clients have. Recently, the insurance payers have also stated, along with a recent ACA alert, that current authorizations will be automatically extended during the COC period. So, for example, if you have a Sunshine client whose current authorization ends on, let's say, March 12th, then Sunshine will automatically extend the current PA until the 120 days or May 31st as an out-of-network provider. Now, if you're in network with Sunshine, and then you can make an authorization request 30 days before the end of the COC period, or if the PA extends beyond May 31st, Sunshine will extend the authorization through July 31st. Now, this example applies to Sunshine Health. I definitely recommend checking out the ACA COC provisions for ABA page, which details the different payers' timelines, such as Community Care Plan, or CCP, which will be 90 days after the live date of February 1st. And as the end date for the COC period approaches, I recommend familiarizing yourself with authorization guidelines for the payers you are in network with. The good news is these managed care plans also have to follow Medicaid BA guidelines. So if you actually researched authorization guidelines for the payers, there's a common theme of requesting familiar information, such as a CDE, a valid physician order. So something to keep in mind. Now, I know we're all focusing on billing during this month, and honestly, the PA automatic extensions are such a great relief as many providers are learning how to use Availity or how to even bill claims for managed care, something they have never dealt with before. So, not having to focus on authorizations during this frustrating time is a win. Now, let's focus on billing during this period. Managed care plans must provide timely payments to providers, with 85% of claims being paid within 7 days, 95% within 10 days, and 98% within 20 days at the Medicaid rate for up to 60 days. If these managed care plans do not comply with the timely payment requirements set forth by ACA, then you have the right to file a complaint with ACA for any delays. Now, delays as a result of you, the provider, submitting denied claims for reasons that are of your own doing. By that I mean claim errors you made, such as duplicate claims or incorrect coding, then that's on you, not the managed care plan. Now remember, the COC ABA ACA page I mentioned earlier, it also lists the Medicaid payment rates timeline. For example, Sunshine will pay the Medicaid rate for a minimum of 120 days for non-participating providers. However, Molina will be 90 days. So the question everyone wants to know now, how do I bill? It depends on the payer. All of this depends on the payer, but many are through Availity, unless you're billing clients under United. And if you're billing clients for Community Care Plan, which is under Therapy Network, then you can only submit batch claims through Availity, besides their portal and paper claims. Do not attempt to build community care plan in Availity. It would be considered overpayment as stated in the Therapy Network BA manual. You do not build the plan directly. You will need to build Therapy Network. Another quick tip, and I most likely will make an episode on ABA billing soon, but do not forget to include the rendering and referring provider in your claims using Availity. Very, very critical. And if you're ever stuck on how to use Availity and all its features, Availity has a fantastic learning section in their page, which is a great resource. So, highly recommend to watch their demos and recorded webinars, or even sign up for a live webinar where you can even ask questions. Something everyone seems to be worried about, and rightfully so, is billing claims. But not many are asking how and when will I get paid for my claims. So after you submit a claim to a specific payer, let's use the example of Big Daddy Sunshine, since everyone is the most worried about this payer. So after you submit a Sunshine or a CMS claim, you would then be able to complete the EFT process with PaySpan, which will allow you to receive direct deposits instead of waiting for paper checks for your paid claims. Now, quick tip, they say you would have to wait for a paper check, but I recommend contacting PaySpan and seeing if it's possible to go through the validation process. Now, this only applies if you are a contracted provider with either Sunshine or Carelon for Simply claims. The reason I say Simply is because Carelon also uses PaySpan for EFT, which is fantastic, so you don't have to go through another EFT process. However, bad news if you are dealing with claims for the other payers. For example, Therapy Network is VPay and Molina is Echo. Now, how long will you have to wait to get paid? It depends on the payer, but some payers may be 10 days, 15 days, or even longer to process the claim. So just imagine waiting for a paper check after the claim gets approved. Now, for the credentialing bit of this episode, I know we are all already pretty much a week within this transition, but if you haven't already, and I'm going to be blunt here, you need to make a sort of spreadsheet and look at your client list and see which clients you may possibly have to discharge due to being out of network after the COC period if you haven't contracted with that payer by then. I do want to stress that I know you as a practice owner are going through a hectic period, but that is no excuse to not have a discharge plan in place for clients that you know you will not be able to service after the COC period. It is your duty as a provider to ensure that services provided to these clients are uninterrupted as much as possible. That's the whole point for the COC period, not just for the providers, but also for the clients and their families. Now for the part no one wants to hear me say, but these managed care plans also have the right to refuse your participation within their network. They are not obligated to extend a contract to your practice. If you are located in South Florida, you know that there's an ABA practice in every corner, no matter which city you are in. There's no way these health plans are going to extend a contract to everyone, no matter how much we want them to. And due to this surplus, these plans have the upper hand and they will be selective. But I will try to stay a bit positive. If you are located in Miami-Dade, then you know you have to be in network with 8 plans. You have options. Now, you may get a contract with 1 or 2 or even 5. You just have to keep applying. Now, if you're located in Central and North Florida, then you're most likely looking at 4 to 6 plans, depending on your region. But the 4 plans that you would deal with statewide are Florida Community Care, or FCC, Humana, Simply, and of course, Big Daddy Sunshine. FCC is outsourced to BSN, which is prioritizing accreditation, so something to keep in mind if you choose to enroll with them. Simply is outsourced to Carelon. Humana is directly handling their contracting via the medical network, where you have to send a W-9 and a letter of interest to an email. And Big Daddy Sunshine is also directly handling their contracting for clients under the CMS and Sunshine plan. Sunshine has been very forthcoming with information these past few weeks, and it's very much appreciated, especially since your practice is most likely dealing with a large volume of CMS Sunshine cases compared to other plans. Some of you are already in the contracting process with Sunshine. Some of you are already in the contracting process with Sunshine. Remember to be patient as you wait for the executed contract. They're dealing with a large volume of applications statewide. You have until May 31st to see the clients until your contract is active, so no reason to stress just yet. However, there is a concern that I do believe warrants a little stress, and that is credentialing your therapists, your service providers. Without them, there will not be any claims to submit or any checks to deposit. If you have a contract with any of the managed care plans, please do not forget to send over your roster so they can load your RBTs into their system so you can actually bill their services. The COC period is the perfect time to load your RBTs into the payer system because the COC period will allow you to service members without being quote unquote credentialed with the payer. As ACCA has stated, members cannot be without services during this period. However, and I cannot stress it enough, do not procrastinate uploading or updating your roster with your contracted payers. The processing time can vary depending on the payer, but it can take weeks, and those weeks fly by. Which brings me to a very important point to make. After the COC period, the hiring and onboarding of any therapist will be slightly different. These payers will not allow any therapist to render services to their members without being credentialed or loaded into their system, which, like I said earlier, takes time. So what does that mean for your practice? Or if you're a therapist and not a business owner joining me in this podcast, that means you cannot just jump in and start working the next day. So for example, if you are a Sunshine contracted group and you have a CMS member, let's call the member Susie. Well, Susie is currently without services because of a lack of available RBTs to take her case within your agency. So what do? You try to recruit a new RBT who can service the member. However, it's not that simple. Let's say you do find, interview, and hire a new RBT. Let's call that RBT Maria. Well, Maria can't just see Susie the next day. She will need to be loaded into Sunshine's system and associated with her tax ID. But remember what I said, it takes time. So if Maria was officially employed with your agency, let's say on June 14th, but she will not be able to start working with Susie until she gets loaded. And Sunshine, they can take up to 60 days or even longer to load Maria into their system. So you see where I'm going with this? This example can actually be applied across all payers. So for the Marias out there, don't think you can easily jump from agency to agency thinking your pay will not be affected and you can start working the very next day with a new agency. Now, some may say the payer will backdate the credentialing approval, but I wouldn't bet on it because let's say they don't backdate it. Well, you can't just not pay Maria because Sunshine denied your claims due to the rendering provider not being in network. You told Maria to work, so time to pay Maria for the services she rendered. If you are a BCBA, the process may take much longer because unlike an RBT, you won't simply be loaded into a payer system via a roster, but would actually have to be credentialed, which takes time. I know it's quite frustrating because time is what we don't have. So I think I pretty much covered all I wanted to. So final points. If you're an ABA agency, what are your next steps? If you're already contracted with any payer, make sure to read up on their BA manual, stay up to date on any required annual trainings, read your contract so you know what is expected of you as a participating provider, and keep the provider relations contact number saved on your phone. You will be using it, I promise you. But seriously, if you are already contracted, set up EFT as soon as possible, email or upload updated rosters, and stay alert for any paper checks or claims that require your attention. If you are not yet contracted with a specific payer, then keep applying to them. Keep rendering services as mandated by ACCA, get familiar with availability, and worst case scenario, have a discharge plan in place for clients you may not be able to see after the COC period. If you're an RBT, BCABA, or BCBA, don't be afraid to ask questions or voice your concerns with your agency. You have every right to ask them what plans they're in network with, and if there will be any payment delays during this transition. Also, and some agencies that are listening to this are going to hate me right now, but I'm going to be transparent here. As the COC period comes to an end and your agency is not yet contracted with the payers your clients are with, then I think you should think about applying to other agencies in the meantime so they can start the credentialing onboarding process with you. So once the COC period ends, you won't be without a job. Remember, Maria? Once again, I'm your host, Hades, and you've been listening to ABAccess Hub. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions related to this episode, you can DM me on Instagram. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll talk about business trends in ABA for 2025. Talk to you all.